Hey guys, I just wanted to come up with a quick video to show off my Apex Legends settings. I've had some friends and different people ask me about my settings for Apex, like normal graphic settings, as well as for streaming in OBS. So I figured I'd run down everything that I can real quick. And I'm going to start with OBS, and then I'll hop into game. Well, I'll do the out-of-game settings first, and then hop into game and show that off. So, alright, first things first is make sure you add a scene in OBS. You can just click Add a Scene, and then you need to add a display, or a game capture for your source. So just right-click under Sources, and click Game Capture, title it whatever you want to, and then make sure to do capture specific window while Apex is open, and pick Apex as the window here. That will ensure that it's always picking up Apex rather than something else. So, because I've had issues without it automatically detecting the game, that'll just make sure that you're picking the right one. So, that'll be that. One thing that a lot of people don't do as well, that I didn't do for a long time, that helps a lot, is make sure you click on your gear next to your mic and select filters. And in here you can select, you can click the little plus button down here, and there's all these different filters. They added a couple filters in the last update of OBS. I haven't messed with them yet, but I do know noise gate and noise suppression both work really well. So I would highly suggest popping both of those in. You have to play with them a bit, but basically it'll make sure that any background noise you have will just get cut out past a certain point. So you'll just have to play with your settings and figure out what works for you. But that gets rid of a lot of my background noise, because like I have my the heater and whatnot can be heard right outside my window really loudly before, but now that all gets cut out when I'm not talking, so it makes a big difference. Beyond that, as far as the actual settings go, we'll just click on the settings button, and we'll go right to stream. Make sure you connect your Twitch account in here if you want some of the added features like chat and whatnot built into OBS. Mine's a little bit different because I'm using Stream Elements, so if you use Stream Elements you'll see similar, but otherwise OBS itself will be a little bit different. But beyond that, make sure that your server is pretty much your closest server. I use the Virginia one because it's pretty close to me. Could use like New York or something as well, but it works for me. I think it might auto detect as well, so you might be alright with that. But if you ever have issues with dropping frames and stuff like that, and it's not due to your encoder, sometimes it could be a server related issue, like a server congestion thing too. So that's one thing to switch occasionally if you ever need to. As far as your output goes, make sure to go to your output tab and then drop this down to advanced. So once it's on advanced, you should see this pretty similar setup. I can't drop this down because I'm recording with OBS right now, but under streaming, make sure you pick the new NVIDIA and NVENC codec. Assuming you're using an NVIDIA card, this is the best setting currently if you're using a single PC setup. For streaming, if you somehow have the money to go dual PC setup, that's a little bit different. Probably have to do some research on that yourself, but currently, with the current technology, the new NVENC codec is the way to go. Make sure your rate control is set to CBR. This means constant bitrate. VBR is variable bitrate. That used to be popular as well, but constant bitrate is the way to go now. I use 6000. 6000 is the max you can do on Twitch, at least without being a partner. You have to go to somewhere like speedtest.net and make sure that your upload rate can handle it. But if so, 6K is the way to go. Put in 2 for keyframe interval. Twitch asks for 2, so I just leave it on 2. Works out. I currently have a 2070 RTX card. I just got a new 2070. So even though my CPU is only a 3770K, it's like 7 years old, something like that. I can stream on max quality because of my graphics card. So something to try if you're dropping frames is to lower this. Otherwise, go max quality. It should be fine as long as you have a powerful enough card. Profile you can just set on high. Keep psychovisual tuning checked when you're playing games like Apex that have high rates of motion. Otherwise, you can uncheck that sometimes for like slower games, say like Hearthstone or something like that, and you'll get better quality. But GPU you don't want to touch, and max frame should be 2. I think that's default. Audio, you could probably keep everything the same, but just make sure you select whatever your actual setup requires for your mic and your audio device. That'll vary person by person, but I changed my sample rate to 48, but doesn't really matter that much. They're pretty similar. Under video settings, if you're streaming with 6K bitrate, you should be able to do 1920 by 1080 at 60 FPS. Some people scale down to 1280 by 720, I think it is, but it really depends. I think there's a list on Twitch's website that shows you all the different resolutions and the bit rates that it recommends. So I'd suggest checking that out. I think everything else you can keep the same. If you want to stream delay, you can add that here. Beyond that, though, should be good in OBS. One thing to keep in mind is make sure to disable Xbox game capture or game mode or whatever it is in Windows. That causes huge problems when you're recording and doing other stuff with your software, like other software. So one of my friends just tried to use OBS and was dropping frames, encoding frames like crazy, and it was just because of Xbox game mode. So alright, as far as Apex itself goes, open it up in Origin and check the game properties under settings. Go to advanced launch options. I have these set. So dash novid just makes it so the video at the start of the game launch doesn't show. And then plus FPX underscore max 0 means that there's no cap on the FPS. The game innately caps your FPS at 144, and when I put my new card in, my 2070 in, I was getting crazy frame stuttering when I hit the cap for some reason, and then when I uncapped it, that stopped happening. So if that's an issue for you, try that. Otherwise, if you just are okay with having a cap at 144, then you don't need that. So that's that. Let's open up the game, and I'll show my settings in game real quick. Assuming it starts sometime today. One thing to note is full screen versus borderless windowed. I have 2 monitors, so I used to play with borderless windowed all the time. But when I upgraded to my 2070, I was getting some issues with the game on borderless windowed and like some performance drops. So like I just went to full screen and basically I was getting another 10 to 20 FPS over borderless windowed, and I wasn't having any of the like hiccups that I was having before. So also something worth trying, even though it sucks having to tab out. Like when you tab out, it gets rid of the game in full screen and whatnot. But alright, so gameplay options, I leave all this stuff on. I should turn button hits off, but for damage numbers, I like stacking personally because it lets me see the exact amount of damage I did to someone, so I can call that out easily to teammates. Some people use floating so that you can see each individual hit. It's pretty preference based, I think. You can use both. Shroud plays without damage numbers anymore, so I mean, do whatever works best for you. All this stuff is pretty okay where it is. Ping opacity I put on faded. This makes it easier to spot people, like when someone on your team is, say, downed or whatever, and you see their downed mark in the world, it'll make it easier to spot people. It's still kind of a pain in the ass sometimes, it kind of gets in the way, but it's better than on default, so worth a shot. One thing to note in here is if you like ADSing by holding, make sure to change that immediately, because otherwise it'll be toggle. And some people didn't realize that you can switch toggle off and hold. But yeah, I can't stand toggle, so just switch to hold. Mouse sensitivity, that's all like preference based, honestly. Generally speaking, a little bit lower is better, like especially if you play at a really high DPI, you want a little bit lower, but you really just have to find what works for you. Let's go for the video settings now. I play in full screen. Keep this stuff native, generally speaking. If you're running on a different monitor that's not 1080p, this might look different, like if you're running on 1440, but that'll be up to you. Field of view, you can kind of go with whatever preference you like here too. I think 103 or 104, something like that, is equivalent to like Overwatch's max FOV. I put it at max just to try to have max like visibility, but not everyone likes that. After that, make sure you basically disable VSync, adaptive res FPS. Some people like this, some people don't, so that's something you can play with. It could potentially help your performance, potentially not. So if you have a really low-end graphics card, that might be a very good option for you. Basically, it'll lower the resolution of the game, so the game will look worse, but it'll try to keep whatever frame rate you set. Beyond that, I have anti-aliasing on. This is to give me better clarity, like so there's not jagged shit around everything. It makes it just way easier to spot people, for me personally. Some people turn it off and are fine. But like texture streaming budget, texture filtering, I have these up to max because I like having high quality textures. I think it makes the game look more clear, and it's easier to manage like visuals, like clarity. But some people also turn this all the way to minimum, so make sure that this only goes up to whatever your graphics card can handle. So if I have an 8 gig card, so I can go all the way up. If you only have like a 2 gig card, make sure it's on very low, you know. If you don't care about textures, you're fine with the game looking like complete shit, or you know, like a 1990 PlayStation game, then minimize everything and that's fine. Besides that though, I turn everything on low or off except for impact marks. This is really preference, doesn't really have any really kind of performance impact really, so I just leave it on high. Everything else is on low. That's pretty much it. Get as much performance as possible while still making the game look relatively good because of textures in AA. So model detail is the only thing that really makes a huge difference as far as like, apparently there are certain rocks that kind of cut off at different angles depending on what viewpoint this is on. So you might see someone's head versus someone's shoulder, for example. So yeah, putting on low is best as far as that is concerned. And then as far as audio, I have my master volume relatively high still, and then I turn down and my sound effects all the way up, but I turn down dialogue a little bit below half. In music and lobby, I just put all the way down to 1% because I want them on still. I think the game has good music and everything, but they're really fucking loud otherwise, and you don't need that while you're in game, really. Sound effects all the way up, because I want to be able to hear footsteps. That's a huge deal in this game, is being able to hear footsteps. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't too, mind you. But yeah, that'll be it for my settings pretty much. So hopefully this helps someone out, and I'll see you later.